Okay, hello, welcome to the Sabbatical Hustings for the SRC Spring Elections 2016. My name is Liam King, President of the SRC. How evening is going to work, we're going to start with the candidates for Vice President Student Activities, then we're going to have the candidates for Vice President Student Sport, then Vice President Education, and then we'll finish with the presidential candidates. The candidates will have 3 minutes to set out why you should vote for them, and then there'll be questions from the floor. We've got a hashtag so you can tweet along, which hip and in these days, and then that's it really. So very straightforward and simple. So without further ado, the candidates for Vice President Student Activities.
Hi, I'm Farhan. I'm a third-year accounting and finance student. So one of the main reasons I'm running for the position of VP Student Activities is because I want to give back to the uni. I want to be a friendly face for new students coming in and a defender for students who are already here. One of my main involvement with SRC started during my first year as a class rep, where I attended meetings with students and the lecturers, and trying to improve the lectures during my first year, because we had a problem with lectures and we actually got our lecture changed. So I communicated well with the staff and helped my class achieve a good experience. And another experience I have is being a freshers helper this year. I got to know a rough idea of how to run and the main activities involved with organizing Freshers Week. I've also organized one of the major events on campus this year, which is Glasgow Economic Forum. So we have established that for the first year last year, and for the first time last year. So I have a basic knowledge how to organize events which will help me during Freshers Week. And volunteering for charities like Macmillan and York Hill from my first year will definitely help me during RAG Week for trying to raise money for charities and getting sponsors. Yeah, so that's my experience, and my main aim is to have an SRC which is accessible to all students and is transparent, where all students can provide input and I can help them achieve the results they need. Thank you.
Okay, hi, my name is Mary Harris, as up there. So firstly, I'm just going to talk a bit about myself, my experience, and then go on to my aims. Obviously, I've only got 3 minutes, so I've massively cut this down. And if you do have any further questions, I'd be very willing to take them. So first of all, my experience. I have extensive SRC experience. I have 2 years in SRC Council. I'm currently holding the Charities, Clubs and Societies Officer position, and that means I've worked extensively with the current VP of Student Activities. It also means I understand how the SRC works in terms of council. Council can be a bit daunting, there's a lot of people on it, and it can be quite confusing. It means if I get this role, I'm not going to have the learning period for that. It means I'm going to have the learning period for the position, but I understand how council works already. In terms of my other experience, I'm a bit obsessed with PR. I think it's kind of evident by my campaign. I like to do a bit of PR. Whenever I've been involved in clubs and societies at university in previous years, I've always ended up in the PR role, and through that, I'm pretty good at promotion. So yeah, and then also fundraising. This year I've been successful fundraising. I love fundraising. I don't think many people could say they've sat a tub of custard for charity. So yeah. Moving on to my aims. Again, I've cut this down a little bit. The first one, as I said, is fundraising. I've worked tirelessly with charities this year, and I want to continue that, mainly by cross-campus relations with other student bodies. I've talked to pretty much all other election candidates for other student bodies, and I'm so happy that we're all on the same page in terms of actually fundraising together. Secondly, society funding. I'm well aware of the whole block grant situation, and it's difficult for all student bodies. I'm not going to magically pull something out of my hat and say I can make a difference. I know the sabbaticals this year have tried extensively really hard, and it's just difficult. That's why I'm making a short-term strategy for society fundings in terms of grants, and something that means it'll be more sustainable for the future. Third, sports and societies Wednesdays. I love sports, I love societies. Students are still having to choose, however, between them, which I think is really unfair. And that's why I basically said that I want to have lecture recordings on Wednesdays. It basically means that students can actually do extracurriculars without feeling guilty or going behind their work. SRC. I do love the SRC, hence I'm running for this position. But obviously the big word that keeps going around is transparency. I'm well aware of this issue, and I want to basically I've said in my manifesto a bit more outlining what I want to do, but one main thing is just personalise it. I've talked to a lot of people recently, and they said I'm one of the first people that's actually ever contacted them about the SRC, and I think that's crazy. Putting a name to a position can mean a lot, and it definitely means societies, clubs and charities are going to be more likely to approach you. Finally, home students. It's a big thing on everyone's manifesto right now, and I think that's great. The SRC is clearly moving forward with home students, and I'm really excited about that. Students living in Glasgow and attending university are a massive disadvantage, and I really want to raise awareness and change things. Thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Galina Misheva and I'm running for Vice President of Student Activities. I had a little paragraph here about my current experience, but I'm just going to leave that to you to proactively search for candidates' experiences in their manifestos. Instead, I'm going to talk about the things that I actually want to do if I do get elected. One of the main points of my manifesto is the creation of an online calendar which will feature events run by clubs and societies, as well as details such as time, dates, entry fees, if any, and location. The calendar will be advertised and promoted accordingly, and it will give clubs and societies a chance of exposure and an opportunity to attract new members. On the students' part, the calendar will represent a way to know what's happening on campus and become more engaged with activities throughout campus. Meet like-minded people and have a better understanding of everything that is available for you through the SRC. I'm also going to work with other student bodies in setting up monthly workshops, which will give students the chance to learn more skills and improve their current ones. I will also lobby the university for more study spaces and making the campus more accessible, because as the Guardian recently one of the Guardian's recent headlines was a campus stretched to a breaking point, and I feel like we're all very well aware of that. The other main point in my manifesto is the creation of a comprehensive and easy to navigate database which will categorize charity and volunteering opportunities according to subjects. It's important to note that a lot of us do not get enough internship and volunteering opportunities. Thus, I feel like expanding out with the university is actually a really good idea. The SRC is already working with a lot of charities and doing charitable fundraising throughout the year, so this is great. But I would like to essentially create a list that features all charity organizations that are looking for volunteers and prefer students, so that students of this university are aware of the extracurricular activities that are available to them. And finally, if I do have 5 or 10 more seconds, I'd like to make an appeal to all candidates that are running in these elections. We need to make the SRC more transparent, and we need to make sure that people know how important it is to vote. So yes, by all means campaign and make sure that people vote for you, but your first priority should be that students vote and that students know how much their vote actually counts. Is that good with time? Yeah.
So you all mentioned transparency. I want to know exactly what measures you're going to take to make the SRC more transparent.
If we start with Julia and then we'll go Mary.
Sorry, how long do we have to answer? Should I just keep it short? Yeah.
If it starts to rumble on, if any answers start to rumble on, I'll try and encourage a conclusion of the answer.
Okay, I'm trying to play by the rules. What I would do to ensure that the SRC is more transparent is to foster students' engagement and participation. It's not a lie that a lot of students don't actually know, especially first and second years, what the SRC actually does. And I feel like it's high time this changed. I spoke to quite a lot of people at the Hill today because I was running around and giving flyers. A lot of them asked me what the SRC did. A lot of them was surprised some positions were paid. We need to foster students' engagement and we need to promote campaigns, not candidates' campaigns, but campaigns and voting in general in order to ensure a higher voting turnout. Through encouraging and through making campaigns of how important it is to vote. Through putting posters up, through encouraging students, through talking to students, through anything that I possibly could to make sure that everyone knows how important it is to vote. Thanks.
I have like a really long list, so I'll try and like prioritise. My first is actually talking to clubs and societies when they affiliate. We don't have an issue with affiliations with clubs and societies right now, but they affiliate and that's kind of it. They don't have any more involvement. Actually, as I said earlier, a personal email to be like, hi, I'm Mary, and then outline what we can actually do. A lot of societies don't even know we have a table in the library, we can utilise that. Even just saying that in an email, they read it, that can make a big difference. Another very brief one is during elections. I brought up numerous examples in my previous interviews, but actually interactive elections, finding out who are voting, who's not voting, and then using those numbers and actually targeting those particular areas. It's easy to say we're going to target 25,000 students. Like, how can you do that? If we find out maybe first or second years are not active, or third and fourth years are not active, specifically target them and then get engaged with them, and then opening up the SRC to them.
So regarding transparency, I had mentioned in the interviews with Gus that, for example, the council meetings, I would like to either live stream them if that's not feasible, maybe record the council meetings so that they're accessible to students and they can actually know what's going on in the meetings, because most of them just know that SRC is a body or a building which is in the on the campus, but they don't have any direct contact with them. And secondly, to reduce the communication gap between SRC and clubs and societies. For example, for the prevent policy, SRC actually contacted most of the societies, but later on they didn't have any communication regarding what measures did they actually take. So I spoke to some of those societies and they told that they want better communication with SRC. So I would like to reduce the communication gap there, and minutes from meetings should be available to students either on the SRC website, and if elected, I would be more than happy to inform students and discuss the matters and discuss with students the matters which are discussed in the meetings. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have more questions? It's a better question, isn't it?
I'd like to know, please, what the candidates are going to do to widen the appeal of Freshers' Week beyond your traditional young students living in university halls.
And we'll start with Mary Barham.
Elliot, I do love your questions. Basically, one thing that I've found with Freshers' Weeks is that societies, Freshers' Fair is a bit crazy. There's 136 tables going on and people walk around and don't really know what's happening. An active calendar of what's going on and sending that out to every student, getting those societies to email us, Facebook us, whatever, giving what the events are going on in Freshers' Week and actively giving out that calendar like we give out our Freshers' books when they go and collect their passes. I think something like that they're going to read and then they're going to utilise, and then more students will actively be able to do stuff.
So apart from the usual stuff, for example, in Freshers' Week, you can promote the events, but then, for example, home students, they don't have any access to those events, for example, during the night time. So I want to create more day events which are actually fun and just not group sessions. For example, you can have scavenger hunts, charity events, or cafe crawls rather than sub crawls, because some of the home students might not be able to come for them. So stuff like that.
I think it's important to widen the appeal of Freshers Week, but I think it's also important to remember that Freshers Week is the only week that is reserved for freshers, and we should let them have that one. I would widen the appeal of Freshers Week through managing events and making sure that more students are taking part in organising Freshers Week and organising events throughout Freshers Week, rather than simply encouraging students to turn up on Freshers Week and accept free stuff from Domino's, which was a big miss this year when they didn't arrive. I think it's really, really important that freshers know what is happening for Freshers Week, and I think we should also maybe vouch for reducing the cost of Freshers passes, because they are quite expensive and they are really dear. Do I have more time? Okay, we should all participate in organising Freshers Week, so we can all do it as a community and as a university. Thanks.
So it's an extension of Elliot's question. So Freshers Week essentially is an undergraduate event. How are you going to appeal to postgraduates? Because a lot of postgraduate research students actually start in October, not middle of September. So how are you going to make sure you get catch all the postgrads?
To engage with postgraduate students, first thing is like we need to get them more involved during RAG Week so that they can take part, and so they actually take part in the events which are organized by SRC, and as well as those events, as I mentioned before, organizing day events. So that's not necessary to organize them during the Freshers Week, but you can organize them throughout the year. For example, as you said, they come in October, so you can organize events, for example, as I said before, like scavenger hunts or charity events, cafe crawls, crazy Olympics, something like that, and so that they're actually involved with SRC and participate in the events.
I don't know how it's possible to engage postgraduate students with Freshers Week, given the fact that the Research Master's courses start in October. I'm personally doing a postgrad taught degree. I was here for Freshers Week. I think we should instead focus our attention when it comes to postgraduate students on Refreshers Week, after they've had 3 or 4 months of getting in terms with what it means to be in this university, and attempting to create a Refreshers Week that will be engaging for all degrees and for all levels of education. Does that answer your question? Okay.
I know we do have the postgrad week, and it's been mixed success in the past. I'm not going to pretend I'm a postgraduate student. I'm not going to pretend I face the same issues as they do potentially for Freshers Week. I do think it's a big issue, and I promise you I will work tirelessly with all the postgrad conveners on SRC to actually promote their Freshers Week and make sure they get what they want. I could imagine a lot of events, I could suggest a lot of events, but at the end of the day you guys might want it, you might not want it, so I don't want to lie. But I do give that promise if I am elected that I will run a successful week or a successful few days for them to be welcomed into the university.
I was just wondering what you would all do to support student media.
I would support student media. As you know, I'm a part of student media, and student media lies in my very heart. I've been really involved with Subsidy Radio. I love the work that GUSRC and GUM are doing, especially GUM for the last year. I would assist student media with the maximum amount of funds that they can get from the SRC. And I will also assist with coordination and support when it comes to events management, promoting their events pages and news better through the SRC website, Facebook and Twitter page, in order to ensure that we get a higher turnout at events of student media. Thanks.
So obviously student media at the SRC is a very important part of, not at the SRC, at the university, and working extensively with them is my answer to the question. We are separate bodies, but at the same point we should have a good working environment together. I basically obviously want to meet with different student medias and ask them what they want, make sure that they are supported in anything I can physically do. As I said, I'm not physically involved with student media, so I'm not going to start prioritising a specific student media, but I want to utilise all of them and make sure that they feel that they are supported. Funding with them I know is an issue. I know it's been cut back recently, as Galina said, and I'm aware of that, and it's not good. One big thing that I would like to bring back is Media Week. I do think that's something that in the past has worked, and I'm not going to run that by myself. I would need some help with student media if they'd be willing to help me, and if they want it back, I'll bring it back.
To promote student media, I would like student media to get more involved with other clubs and societies. For example, having student media cover some of the events of other clubs and societies, so students on campus are more aware of student media and they actually know what the different student media are, because most of them don't have any idea about GUSRC or Guardian. So I would like them to get involved in society. Secondly, as I mentioned in my manifesto, I want to try to get more funding and more sponsors for student media, and also promote student media during Freshers Week, under Freshers Week.
So I heard in the interview with The Guardian that I think Mary wanted to change the way the grant is allocated to the societies, so I wonder if she could explain that.
Yeah, so basically the grant allocation, we are allocated a certain amount of funds every year, and I'm aware that that's probably not going to change. It's just a bit, the way it's done right now is we have a certain amount for the year, and that's got to sustain for the whole year, but every year it changes in what societies apply, how much they apply for, and sometimes we're left over with money, which, that could have maybe potentially been given a little bit more money to other societies. When I say want to change that, initially I said potentially allocate it towards different areas. So, for example, say different societies in different areas like fundraising or cultural. After having some talks with people, I don't want to promise that because that might not be the best way to sustain the money. But, there's lots of options. Another way of changing it potentially is splitting it in half, having the £4,000 the £8,000 that we have, splitting it in half and having 4,000 first semester, 4,000 second semester. But it's definitely something that I personally feel needs change because we're rising in amount of societies, and if that money's not going to change, eventually we're going to let down even more societies. Does that answer your question?
Support, promotion and communications of the two unions is often poor, I'm assuming so of union events. How will you improve this? I think we'll start with Farhan and we'll go Mary.
Yeah, I've seen that there's communication gap between SRC and the other unions. So I would like to build links within societies and with the unions. For example, during Freshers Week, have events like collaborated events. Even during drag, for example, you can collaborate with GUSRC and use their Starfish program or organize color runs. So you can actually come together and utilize more resources to create better events.
I think the way to make that happen first is to have everyone on board with it, actually wanting to have cross-campus promotion, which, after talking to people, everyone seems to be on the same page, which is great. My first thing is to have a collaboration with the SRC and the other student bodies. I've been talking to several people, and having some sort of board, some sort of committee that would encompass someone, a representative from each body, and then utilise that for fundraising efforts, promotion efforts, events efforts. It's definitely something that I think can easily rectified. It just seems to have, I don't know, previous meetings seem not to have got very far, but I definitely think I can fix that.
I know that the QMU and the GUU and the SRC have obviously different budgets and different aims and a different audience. I feel like the best way to encourage support and communication between the SRC and the different unions would be in organising charity events and working on current events such as Freshers Week and Refreshers Week, Media Week, something that will give everyone a chance to become involved and collaboratively work on certain issues that concern all students in general rather than just sports students or members of the QMU or members of the GUU. I would ensure that through monthly meetings with the presidents and main members of all student bodies, and ensuring that we're all on the same page and we're running everything together.
Do you have any more questions? I just had one question. It was, what is an appropriate target for the SRC in terms of charitable fundraising throughout the year? Yeah, start with Mara, then Billy, and Mara.
Okay, so it's a bit of a difficult thing because having a fundraising target, I found out, is not as simple as just adding up the money you've raised and then saying that's how much we've raised. This year, I know last year it was £3,000, and this year hopefully we're going to hit that as well. But my aim basically is to have more cross-campus relations and have better fundraising efforts with other student bodies. So the target is not going to be a simple figure because it'll be a collaboration effort. If you do it independently, which kind of has been done this year, it can be really difficult. I've worked tirelessly trying to raise money, and it can be hard. And I'm really proud of what we've raised this year. I think, considering how many people have got involved, I think we've done a great effort, considering we don't have a lot of physical, foundations with it. I know QMU last year raised £11,000. They've struggled again this year to raise that much, and I think they're about 5 or 6, so we're not actually that far behind them already. So I don't want to say a target because we don't have, I don't think it's about that. I think basically if we have better events, better fundraising efforts, then I'll be happy with that.
I am also aware of the fact that last year's charitable fundraising brought about £3,000, maybe a little bit more. I don't think it's actually beneficial to set a fundraising target when it comes to charity, even for the SRC. I feel like we should take into account what other years have done and how much money they've raised, but that should only act as the basis on which we should stand. I think we should work with collaborative events, and I think we should make sure that all events are very well advertised and accessible by students. And I also think that the SRC's decision this year to cancel RAG Week and instead make it a year-long opportunity for students to get involved with is actually a really good decision, because everyone knows charity is not done in a day or a week. And I feel like we should keep that practice and just advertise charitable events more adequately through the SRC promotion. Okay.
So regarding, so I was thinking, like, you cannot set a target, but you can take measures to improve the target. Like I mentioned during the debate with GUST, that I would like to get more students involved and have societies set up their own campaigns. And we could also collaborate with other campuses, for example, Strathclyde and Caledonian, to have a collaborative event where you can raise money for a charity, because this will create more competition and will get more clubs and societies involved. Yeah.
All right. Hi. I'm Erin Ross, and I would love to be your next Vice President for Student Support. Just going to get right into it. We need to take the prevention of sexual violence on this campus much more seriously. If elected, I will not sweep this under the rug. We're going to talk about it, and I'm going to enact the changes students need now. I will build on the excellent work that's been done so far, and I will use my activist voice to speed this process up. I will get the Code of Conduct amended to explicitly prohibit sexual violence. It is ridiculous that it doesn't. I will push for a reporting mechanism. It is ridiculous that this doesn't exist. And I will implement comprehensive sexual violence prevention training, which covers consent, bystander intervention, and personal safety. We need to do more for the third of all students experiencing mental ill health. At university, your peers are often your family, your support network, and I want to do more to support them with vital initiatives like suicide prevention training, which I will ensure funding for. I will push to implement CAPS, Counselling and Psychological Services, peer support program into as many schools as possible, and I'll work hard on other early intervention and stopgap methods. I'll get basic self-care and mental well-being info out to the new intake and make that available online. So we also need to better use our key points of contact with the wider student population. That's student body board members, freshers helpers, society execs, SRC reps, all advisory staff, and they need training and inductions into our services so that they can be used as effective signposts to the students who need them. The university must be far more inclusive for the non-traditional student. If elected, I will start here. I'll start in the SRC, and I'll start with Freshers Week. I'm going to implement the excellent idea that's been brought forward from welfare reps of designating a specific Freshers Helper team to these inclusive events to show students that we are committed to their needs and to all of their needs. I'll sustain and develop the positive work that's being done in specific needs groups, and I'll share this practice across the board. This needs to be done in a way that is cohesive, in a way that is intersectional, and I'll work with welfare officers to create more of a team feeling which has space for wider student input. I want to empower students to campaign for the welfare issues important to them, basically, and I want to do this across campus. I think we need to pool our substantial and varied resources to collaborate in a way that actually makes a difference. I'll fight for wider student consultation on the campus redevelopment to ensure that it is designed around students' support needs. I'll also be there to ensure that the needs of current students are not forgotten and that we take adequate measures to sort of compensate for the support, the gaps in their support. If you want a VP that who is open, who is driven, who really cares about this stuff and cares about people, then I think you should vote for me.
Thank you very much, Erin. Right, do we have questions for Erin?
Hi, so I know in the past there's quite a lot of problems with CAPS and it not being adequate support for students. I know obviously that there's a lot of problems with funding with it, but what would you do to try and improve the CAPS service?
I look at how it's being used, because as far as I am aware, it is being used effectively. There is a huge demand for it. It's just, it is the funding thing. So I really would need to get into the job and look around and see what I can realistically do to improve funding. That's why I've been focusing more on these kind of stopgap measures, these kind of intervention, what we can provide, where CAPS is unfortunately lacking. But I am interested in the waitlisting, solutions to the waitlisting issue, like the introduction of perhaps a ticketing system to ensure that that doesn't become an additional mental health problem, the actual wait, which I know it can be. Thanks.
So I'm aware that the CAPS peer support programme cost a lot of money to put in place. So how many schools do you think you'll feasibly be able to get it into?
Feasibly, I don't know yet. I want to present it to my own school and see what they actually say about it, because I don't understand the funding mechanisms entirely yet. I actually don't. But I will push for it. I'll push for the money to come from somewhere and for schools to prioritise and take the needs seriously. I think we need to make sure that school reps are kind of ambassadors for the project and make sure that welfare is prioritised even in the academic forum, the academic context.
Hi. So you mentioned that you want to improve in quality and diversity training, and I was wondering how you would go about putting that together and who you would consult.
A big thing that is bad, that is terrible about the equality and diversity training is that it is not at all LGBTQ plus inclusive. It's absolutely terrible. Trans people are invisible in the training. And so there's already some really good work that's been started with LGBTQ plus, and that, you know, what is it called? Like the focus, not the focus group, the like work stream, to like get some society members actually in to give physical training. It's not, so we're looking at speaking to the university about training about changing the actual online training, but also like just doing a bit more training that's more extensive, that's more interactive, kind of practical stuff. So I think from what I know, all the student bodies would be keen on having that. As of September, getting some additional training in for their freshers helpers.
Hi, Aaron. I get where you're coming from with the idea to put sexual violence into the code of conduct. My concern with that is that the student conduct committees are very poorly resourced and placed to deal with that kind of issue. Do you not think it would be better to put in place a system where there's a reporting mechanism where the university is engaging directly with the police, with the public prosecutor, as a way to deal with this, as opposed to making it an internal issue which might cause more problems than it resolves?
I think the problem with that, and what I'm most recently thinking about, is the fact that in St Andrews, they've got this issue whereby if you report an instance of sexual violence, it goes straight through to the police. It's that you're then taking away the self-directed aspect of support. I think that survivors need to be empowered to actually be supported how they would like to be supported, and I think that we can do that internally. I think that we need we need to kind of a revision of the system of like where students are supposed to go if something happens to them, and they should be allowed to seek their own support. So to me, it is actually feasible, and it is important. It's just important in principle that it explicitly prohibits it in the code of conduct. I can't really say more than that. It has to be done.
Do you have any more questions, Sarah? I can't think of any good questions. I assume that you've done your reading from the annual report. I'm going to ask you what are numbers? They're always good.
I don't know the number. I know some of the breakdown, I guess. Oh God, I don't know. Appeals and like employment issues, I want to say. Like, yeah, withholding, lots of accommodation issues. Yeah, I don't know.
Can you give us a sense for what you think
the actual number is?
Between those is?
I think it is overwhelmingly maybe accommodation issues. I want to say that's me. That's my go.
Well, it was 2,303.
Oh, it's more than I thought.
And you're right that academic appeals and employment rights and accommodation are big ones, but it's overwhelmingly academic appeals followed by accommodation followed by employment rights. But it was a grand go with that.
Thank you.
Well, if there are no right.
Hi. So you mentioned the campus redevelopment and the need for better counselling and psychological services. Would you campaign for a CAP centre to possibly be included in this project?
Yeah, I hadn't thought about it, but I will. That sounds great. Let's do that. I think the issues, maybe, I don't know that there's an extensive issue with the space for CAPs, other than that if we were actually able to get the staff that were needed, they would need more space in order to do their work. I think it's more a funding issue and a staffing issue, but I will certainly, I think wider consultation in general with the student population needs to be done on the campus redevelopment. So if what transpires from that is that that's an important welfare issue that needs to be addressed, then certainly I will further that. Cheers.
Well, if there are no further questions, going on. Right, well, thank you very much, Aaron.
Hi, I'm Kate, and I want your vote to be the next Vice President Education. During the last 2 years, I've been the undergraduate arts convener on council, and in this time, I pushed for greater student representation on a number of academic committees that I already sit on. I've been directly involved in campus redevelopments through the Project Development Board of the Arts co-location. Throughout this time, I've criticised staff priorities, consulted with students, and presented feedback. My experience shows that I not only put in the time and the work into representing students, but I've also developed the knowledge and the understanding into what we need to prioritise, how to get things done, and how to push for student representation. My priorities, if I'm elected as your Vice President, are realistic. My campaign is about making realistic changes that will affect every student's university experience. My first priority is feedback. So feedback, the massive problem with feedback at the moment is that it's inconsistent. One way of solving this inconsistency is making it more accessible at the times that we need it. Making it accessible through an online Moodle platform throughout the course of our degree will change things for undergraduate and postgraduate students. Students often need to look at essay feedback or project feedback the next year after they're doing another similar project. And the fact that they can't access it because we get it through hard copies, we get it through Moodle, we get it through email, it needs to be accessible in one place, which will make student satisfaction much better, and for staff, it will make NSS feedback and results much better. My second priority is transitions. So transitions between year to years can mark significant leaps in expectations. The jump between second year and third year, or undergraduate and postgraduate, needs to be much more explained to students so that they are aware of the options, they are aware of course requirements, they are aware of what's expected of them. So I want to look at the best practice in the university and implement changes across the colleges to make students much more aware of course requirements. So my third priority is pushing forward the exam timetable. I know this is really difficult to change, I know that, but I don't think it should be ignored at all. I think that it considerably disadvantages students who want to go home and students who work and need to fund their degree. So other universities in the UK release their timetables much earlier. University of Glasgow, we have a variety of different subjects, and I think this makes it very difficult to arrange a timetable. But I really want to work with Registry to try and push this at least a week earlier. Another thing I want to talk about is the campus redevelopment. So I want to make sure that students at the university at the moment aren't pushed to one side for campus redevelopment. So we know that the maths building plans are probably going to start going ahead in January. We need to make sure that these students, especially in the maths building, have somewhere to learn, they have somewhere to socialise, they have somewhere to study. We need to make sure that these students aren't forgotten about at all. I want to work with student societies when it comes to these developments to show the development boards what can be, what they can offer and how they can get involved. Okay, thanks.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming tonight. My name is Salim Al-Wasati, and I would like to welcome for joining our hosting today. I'm final year PhD student, currently in School of Engineering. Currently, I'm the postgraduate convener for College of Science and Engineering. I'm running to be your next Vice President Education because I believe that I have the enough experience and the skills to run for this position. I have a very wide experience regarding my past life since I was working as academic lecturer for more than 6 years. On the top of that, I had 2 admin's jobs. I was the head of Quality Assurance Department and then the head of Research and Development Department in the college that I was working before I got my scholarship, my PhD scholarship. My objectives are very clear and straightforward. I have 4 objectives. Mainly, enhance the research quality is the first one. And the second one involve to create a supervision evaluation criteria to evaluate the staff. I mean, for the postgraduate, they are supervisors, or for the undergraduate, they are tutors. And the next one is to strengthen the link between the student and the SRC members, because I feel that, especially for the postgraduate, we have a very poor representation in the SRC body. And finally, organize a workshop and conferences to share ideas and skills across all the students and to start a new collaboration between them. Also to create some sort of workshops, especially for the international students, because they have a lack of, let's say, English writing, especially for academic writing, or some IT skills. One more sentence to say at the end. I think maybe I'm not the perfect one for this position, sorry, but I will do my best to be at students' expectations. Thank you very much.
Salim, you were talking about English academic writing skills and also conferences and stuff. Those things already exist, so I'm just kind of interested in how do you expand on that?
Thank you for your question. I think it's not exist for all the students, especially for the international students. I'm a postgraduate student, and my nightmare is how to write a paper, because I'm not that good in academic writing. I don't remember that I have enough experience, or somebody gave me the experience that how to write a paper or something like this. So basically, most of the international, they face a gap just when they arrive to UK, because you know that we are coming from different culture and different educational background. So basically, we have a lack of, let's say, IT experience, or this, I mean, in terms of the academic writing. So basically, by running a workshop that focus mainly on some hot topics that the international students might suffer from, I think we will get a better result for them. Am I answering your question or not?
Okay, thank you. Then go to Lauren, please.
So this has been a bit of a hot topic for the last few years, but there haven't really been any real gains made on it. Particularly for disabled students, lecture recording is a massive issue, and I just want to find out what the two candidates would do to make sure that real gains are made on this year.
We'll start with Kate.
Hi. Okay, so yeah, the lecture recording policy has gone through, but my experience of how staff view lecture recording policy at the moment is that they think it's going to be used as an alternative to attending lectures, and it's not. It's not how it should be. It should be advertised as a support mechanism for everyone. I think that the way we need to go about this is by making sure that staff are, you know, if there are students who are suffering from, you know, any reason that they can't attend a lecture, that they should be, the lecturers should be able to record the lecture themselves. It shouldn't be something that everyone necessarily has to ask for, but people should. I think I'm going to try and promote it as best as I can and try and get it out there and push for it as a support mechanism rather than an alternative.
I think I mentioned my opinion during the debate. I mostly disagree with the recording lectures because based on my experience as an academic lecturer, I will not see the student anymore, and if I recorded the lecture for them and they can download it from home, street, wherever, and I will lose the connection between them. They might have an idea to create something cool, or they might have any questions that they just when they see the media or the lecture, they will forget them. So basically, I'm totally agree with sitting the student in the class and then giving the traditional lecture as student and tutor. And on the top of that, I want the student to come to the uni to start reading and writing, not to listen and watching videos. Because let's say, for instance, if I'm teaching a material for engineers, so this engineer, when it's graduate, so he will not find any listening material that he can refer to create a design or to do something. Okay, he must read and read and read to be a successful engineer. And that's why we focus mainly on encouraging students to read and to go to the references and to start solving the material or finding the material by themselves instead of downloading them from the internet. And I think if we did that, maybe I agree for very special circumstances, for example, during the illness, maybe, but I mostly disagree with this idea.
Does that answer your question? And then Thais.
Hello. One of you is coming from a very undergraduate perspective, the other one from a very postgraduate perspective, and I was wondering how both of you were going to ensure that you're going to represent both undergrad and postgrad students when you clearly have experience in the two different areas. That makes sense.
Because I'm postgraduate, so I passed through all the undergraduates' problems. So I know most of the problems that the undergraduates suffer from. I think I can represent both because I have enough experience and because I passed through these two periods. So I think I can do.
Hi. Good question. So I've held consultations with PGs before. I don't, obviously, I've never done a postgrad degree, but I think that the one problem that I've come into contact with a lot with postgraduate representation is that the school reps don't necessarily understand how to represent postgrads because they don't understand the structure of their course. And I really want to look at council training especially, work with the school reps to kind of educate them on postgrad, how a postgrad degree works and the issues that they already face. So kind of to work with, you know, undergraduates and postgraduate representatives together to solve those sort of issues.
We have a Twitter question. So it's from James Harrison, who is a former president of the SRC and works for University of Scotland. Should Scotland opt in to the Teaching Excellence Framework, or will harm the Scottish enhancement-led approach to quality? And we'll start with Kate.
This is such a mean question. Okay, so what I know about the Teaching Excellence Framework is it's part A of the Green Paper, and it's basically the government trying to solve issues around value for money and diversity within universities. I don't necessarily know if it's something that the university should opt in, but yeah, I don't want to get. I'm going to look into that. I don't want to get too political.
Does he have a simpler question? Does he have a simpler question? Because I'm international, so I have no idea about these schemes and.
So the Teaching Excellence Framework is basically the teaching equivalent of the Research Excellence Framework, whereby the teaching quality of universities will be externally assessed, and then universities will receive funding relative to how they perform relative to other universities that are undergoing that. It's currently only billed to be introduced in England, however, Scottish universities could, if they wish, opt in.
I think I am with favor of assessing the university by external universities or external bodies, because that will give the university some varieties to enhance their education based on the other, if we say a peer review, based on the other university. That's what we do actually in my country. We assess the quality of the university based on the other university within the country. And recently, before I leave my country, when I was working as a quality assurance manager, we started to do some collaboration to assess our education quality with some of the foreign universities.
Everything that the university builds is late. The library redevelopment is late. Students are routinely inconvenienced. They've managed to upset every member of staff in the maths building. Everything it touches to do with infrastructure is botched in some way or another. How are you, as VP Education, going to make sure that somebody is held to account for that, and that students who are inconvenienced by this routinely are made aware of why they've been inconvenienced and who they can blame for that?
We will start with Salim.
I don't know what to say in this situation, but I have no answer to your question.
Okay, so if we're going to look at especially the library, this has completely created a lot of problems for you students already. And I think that the problem is we need to make sure that it's the estates and buildings that are held accountable for this, not the library staff. We often, because the library is so over capacity, it's up to the SRC to provide alternative study spaces when really, and we're expected to work with library staff on that, and it's not actually anything, it's not the SRC's fault and it's not the library staff's fault. So with things like this, I think we really need to publish what's going on, tell students when the maths plans are going to go forward, and make sure that, almost embarrass the university to show them that this is not okay and this is never going to be acceptable.
Yeah, question for Salim. So you don't support lecture recording, and as we've heard, lecture recording is widely treated as a support mechanism. Have you considered the impact that taking away lecture recording or impeding progress in lecture recording would have on disabled students, students with mental health issues?
I think I enclose my sentence by saying that I agree in special circumstances such as illness. So basically for the disabled people, I do agree that to record the lectures, but we need a supporting mechanism that this student, if he has a question or he has an idea, that can directly report that to the tutor. Basically, building such things need a massive infrastructure to be prepared in advance of handling such a massive amount of data stream and videos, as well as a special prototype of chatting between the tutor and the student. I do agree for the disabled and for special circumstances like illness, as I said before, but for the healthy student, if we say that, no, I disagree.
Okay, we'll go Oscar, and then Addy, and then Sarah.
The university is in an exciting period of internationalization, but this also means that, especially in the honors years, there's a large influx of students coming to finish their degree here in Glasgow. So how would you work to make sure that the quality of teaching isn't sacrificed in this process and that it remains high, both for those coming and for students doing their 4 years here in Glasgow?
I will start with Kate.
So I know that this is a problem that we discussed, and it's in the science and engineering with students coming in third and fourth year. I think that there needs to be things like class sizes, I think, can make a big difference to the quality of teaching and the resources that are available. So for these students, I want to make sure that there is kind of safeguards in place to ensure that, especially for class sizes and for resources available, that these aren't kind of, the standards don't slip for students who are affected by this internationalization.
I think we need to publicize our achievement, I mean in terms of the universities, and especially for postgraduate studies. If we tell the student that, we say prospective student, that we achieved this and we achieved that, I think they will bias toward us and they can start to make Glasgow their first choice. So I think publicizing our work is the most important things, and show our, which shows the enhancement that we achieve in terms of the education and the quality of the research.
Sorry to go back to the lecture recordings, but mostly for Salim, though, Kate, if you have anything to say, I'm more than happy to hear. If you don't agree with, or you're not as keen for lecture recordings, do you have something else that you would implement to help disabled students and students with mental health issues so that they can fulfill their full potential at university?
Okay, I will say it again. I agree with recording lectures for disabled, okay? But for healthy students, no. I'm saying that because I'm a lecturer already when I was in my country. So I'm telling that from a tutor's perspective. I'm not a student's perspective.
Is there anything else you'll implement instead?
No, for disabled, I agree. Yeah, for disabled, no, for disabled and illness cases, no, I agree. Okay, because they have no other choices. Either to do their degree remotely or to sit in home with their disabled and they die after that. So I agree, but for the healthy side, no. For healthy, no.
Did you literally just say that?
Okay, thank you. Kate, I don't know if you have invite.
Yeah, I was just going to say that the school reps that we have aren't just, obviously they're academic officers, but they do represent students on issues that aren't just necessarily to do with their courses. So I think that we need to work with the welfare officers to make sure that any problems we have, students are supported.
Right, yes, we'll go to Seb and then we'll come down to you. So just Seb, just behind you there.
In fear of further exacerbating things, this is for Salim again. Again concerning the recording of lectures. For a start, I have to say it does seem that you're coming much more from the perspective of a lecturer, and I think the role is more aimed at assisting students and their course through university. Going back to the recording of lectures, in which case I think you're suggesting that all lectures would be recorded, but those students in need of going back to them and accessing them, say from home, would then need to apply through some kind of process to access them in the first place. Do you think that's fair to impose on ill students, on students going through mental health issues to then have to go through a further admin process so as to access their learning materials. It smacks of our current government's Fit to Work programme a bit, I think.
Sorry, could you repeat the question? I didn't understand it. Sorry about that.
So I think the question was that in your previous answer you had suggested that you would, before the recording of all lectures, but then those lectures would only be made available to students who had extenuating circumstances. And so it was, is that really fair to make students go through a process or make students who are in the extenuating circumstances go through a process during their extenuating circumstances to get lectures that are recorded anyway?
It's hard to say fair or not, but do you think that it's fair that you are healthy and those people are disabled? That's the question. I'm looking for an answer. Sorry?
That is my question.
Yeah, I'm telling you because they are disabled, so we need to give them something back. They are not healthy like us.
Right. Ian.
So I'll ask a question which moves away from lecture recording, but I first just wanted to make a statement before that question that I'm a disabled student and I'm not planning on dying anytime soon. First of all, Glasgow's an international uni. Anyway, sorry. Glasgow's an international uni. Sorry, phone, as I said, that statement went to die. It's an international uni that attracts diversity and great talent from around the world to lecture within this estate. In the teaching, though, many of the students can find that new lecturers from different cultural backgrounds can sometimes struggle to communicate the content effectively to students. This is a quite common complaint you see within the student representative circles, where basically students are struggling to understand what new lecturers from different cultural backgrounds are saying. As in the position of VP of Education, what would you do to try and address this problem?
So I think, based on the last time we had a question for the both of you, it's Salim and then Keith.
Okay, so I think that when it comes to this kind of problem, I think there needs to be safeguards in place to ensure that the standards, a bit like with internationalisation, that standards don't slip, and there needs to be better communication in place for students. We need to work with representatives to make sure that these cases can be targeted from the offset.
I don't have more to add on Kate's, what she mentioned, but we need to do some publicizing our achievements through the media to the world, that to know that, okay, we are doing that and that.
Do we have any more questions for
Right, so obviously a functioning advising mechanism is very important for your university choices when it comes to, for example, switching your degrees or, course choices, being in first 2 years or in honors. However, they're really different in the different colleges. For example, I think it's in the business school that every lecturer has to be an advisor, whereas in arts, for example, there's an arts advising office, a centralized one. How would you work with all the colleges to ensure a certain standard of quality in advising?
Okay, so creating a standard across all the colleges is one of my most important things to measure, to address after if I won the election. Basically, we have some variety across all the colleges regarding these issues. So, if we start with the graduate offices or with the schools themselves, we can come up with a standard criteria to equalize all the things across all the universities. So we have one certain criteria pass all to all the students.
Okay, so obviously in different subjects, different disciplines and different colleges, they need different types of advisors. So obviously we've been looking at, in the Arts College at the moment, the advisory system changed last year. So we're looking at ways of communicating that better to second, third and fourth years and postgraduates. So I think that we need to make sure that there is consistency across each advisor and making sure that when a student complains that they can go to a school rep or they can go to a class rep, to advertise that as something that they can go to a school rep for, not just academic issues.
Do we have any questions? Yes, we'll go Jane.
This one's more for Salim as well, because Kate's already mentioned it. I want to know if you want to push for the bringing forward of the exam timetable and how you would do it.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I don't want to say because it's already mentioned with Kate's manifesto. Actually, it's a problem because I didn't study here my undergrad, so I didn't have any idea about this problem that the student might face, especially before the exams. Yeah, I think if I be the guy for this position, I will do my best to achieve my objectives and my Kate's objectives. Yeah, because both of these objectives run through the desired goal or the desired thing that we are looking for. One last thing to mention is the Vice President of Education is not a person, it's a position. So either of us run for or hold this position, I think we will target the main problem and we will solve it based on the experience that we had and the problem that we faced during our life or during our study here in Glasgow.
Any more questions? I just have one question for you. So the SRC has produced a strategic plan and it will guide the work that we do up until the year 2020. There's three strategic aims: representation and engagement, sport and well-being, and volunteering and community engagement. How are the manifestos that you've produced going to advance the activity that's set out in this strategic plan? And we'll start with Kate and then we'll go to Celine.
Okay, well, as you said, engagement, I definitely want to work with school representatives and course conveners to encourage people to engage through class reps. I want to hold things like class rep conferences where we can see, you know, best practice. I want to encourage students to work with staff through the SRC. So I think that small steps like that can definitely work in the strategic plan.
I think more involvement from the postgraduate and undergraduate together will help to do or to achieve this strategic plan for the 2020. And also, I mentioned in my manifesto that holding such conferences or workshops, actually it's a long-term treatment for students who suffer from maybe shy because they don't like to present their works, or they might have problems regarding the IT or writing or whatever. So basically by running such or engaging or motivating students through this line will help to achieve, or not to achieve, fully achieve, but to do something regarding the strategic plan.
Hi, I'm Unamri Dara. I'm the current Vice President Student Support, and before that I served on council as a first year rep and the Disability Equality Officer. So this year I've implemented quite a few things in my term, including the Safe Taxi scheme, which will ensure students can get home safe if they're stuck on nights out. I coordinated and ran a very successful welfare week with more events than previous years. I've represented student views on various high-level committees in the university and sit on all the equality and diversity groups this year. I've done some secret shopping work with letting agencies to try and expose exploitative landlords, and that's available on our website if you want to have a look. I've also this year launched the Disabled Student Network. I've worked to make Freshers Week as accessible as possible, running a list of events that target non-traditional students, and also helping my welfare officers run their meet and greet that was very successful this year. As your president, I will continue the work that I've started to eradicate sexual violence on campus. The governance and structure of the SRC is going to be changing massively, and the SRC now needs a president that can make sure these changes work to make us a more relevant, more effective body on campus. One of the things I mentioned in my manifesto was about establishing a campaigns forum. We need a more dynamic and more active SRC that is relevant to students. We need to work alongside other student bodies and clubs and societies to make sure this happens. If this university wants to be a world-class, world-changing organisation, then it needs to be more supportive of the students that are currently here. The estates development, which is £775 million, when that goes on, we need to ensure that it's sustainable, environmentally friendly, and socially responsible, but also doesn't put current needs of current students elsewhere. We need to make sure that the university is listening to us. The SRC needs a strong voice that can hold senior management to account, and I believe I'm that president. Lots of people have already mentioned transparency, but that's something I want to push for if I'm elected as a new figurehead of the organisation. We do put our minutes online after council meetings, but they're not an accessible format. There needs to be bulletins going out to college-specific students, telling them all about the welfare that's happening and all about college-specific rep work, so that everyone gets the relevant information and isn't overloaded by too many emails. I believe, if I look at my manifesto, all the aims I've outlined can be realistically achieved in my term. For a president with experience and the skills and the strength to make these changes, and for a voice that will campaign for what students want, please, tomorrow and Thursday, vote Unamri your #1 candidate for SRC President.
So hello everyone, my name is Amir and I am currently your Vice President of Student Activities here at the SRC, and I am running for SRC President. As VP of Student Activities over the last year, my role has largely concerned organisation of extracurricular activities and events, and also continuing to promote and support the student experience on a broad level. My role this year included coordinating and working with Cross Campus to organise a highly engaging and successful Freshers Week. I have supported clubs and societies throughout the year. This has included organising events, accessing funding, and also meeting affiliation criteria with the SRC. I've also worked with the other student bodies throughout the year, including during refreshers this year, which I believe is the most engaging to date. And I also coordinated the first ever SRC Volunteer Week. During these, different events and activities throughout the year, I've also ran events for what have at times been underrepresented groups, such as mature students, postgraduate students, and international students, and I've also made efforts to outreach to home students as well. I've challenged the university on room booking charges that are incurred to clubs and societies, and also hospitality charges if societies wish to host events on campus. Looking ahead, if I am elected as your president, I want to raise concern around some very key issues. This includes the campus redevelopment which is taking place, which the university is effectively investing over what is estimated to be £1 billion of expenditure on capital expenditure and improving campus facilities. Futile attempts have been made up until now to obviously consult with students and get and attain student feedback. I would like to see a campus development committee that meets frequently throughout the year with estates and buildings, with contractors and with external and with architects to actually put forward to the university what as students we want to see in the new facilities. Another thing I want to look quite closely at, and I believe this is something that goes across the student bodies, is block grant funding allocations. There has not been real terms increase in these for the last couple of years. I think this is something that hugely has to be addressed. Something, you know, that obviously runs across everything from welfare and obviously enhancement of the student experience is that resources are very, very stretched. The only way that we can actually proactively try to improve the services we deliver is to actually look at supply and demand and how the university correlates financial funding to that. I think that, you know, working with other student bodies to make our case stronger and perhaps engaging with external consultancy firms will actually make a strong case to do this. Including to make the SRC a more transparent and visible organisation on campus, I think is something that's very, very important. A recurring theme year to year is that the SRC struggles with engagement to the wider student population. I would like to see the SRC be more visible on campus by hosting drop-in sessions and also becoming more interactive via social media throughout the year. Again, working with other student bodies to promote, you know, common, you know, initiatives and events that we want to promote will also enhance this. For an SRC president, you know, that promotes strong communication from the organisation and will be a strong voice for students. Please vote me as your SRC president. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Ella Morton and I'm standing as the Socialist candidate for the SRC president because I believe the SRC needs to be a fighting council that actually represents students' views and really stands up for the big issues that affect us. As your president, I would link up with a wider student movement, trade unions and FE colleges to strengthen the SRC and make it far more relevant and involved with student politics on campus. The SRC over the past years has failed to engage the majority of students. This is unacceptable. I've not sat on the SRC before, and I can bring fresh views to make sure the SRC becomes more democratic, more accountable, and a strong voice that represents student views and fights for students' issues. I would hold far more consultations with students to ensure that the SRC is really the students' council and that it takes action on the issues that affect them. Poor quality and unaffordable housing is a big issue for students. Since 2008, the average rent in Glasgow has gone up by 20%, and our students face poor conditions coupled with extraordinarily high rents. The SRC can campaign to change this. I would fight for rent controls on privately rented accommodation, which would vastly reduce rents and protect students who at the moment have to hand over large amounts of money to landlords every single month. The SRC, unfortunately, university accommodation is no better. Halls are often dirty, have insect infestations, and are of very poor quality. Worst of all, for this, students are charged unfairly high rents. Halls should be an affordable place for all students who want to leave home, make new friends, or explore a new city, not merely a scheme for the university to make money. If elected, I will lobby the university to reduce rents in halls to maintenance costs only, which would vastly bring down their cost to students. The SRC should also be a vocal voice in the fight for free education for all. As president, I would use the SRC's positions on the Senate and the court, but more importantly, link up with the student movement and make it clear on a national level, we, as students of Glasgow University, believe in free education for all, no matter what their background or where they come from. We could and should be a strong and vocal voice in the fight for free education, and if elected, I'll ensure this. The SRC should stand shoulder to shoulder with college students against the onslaught of cuts that FE colleges are faced with. FE colleges are an accessible route for many students, especially those from poorer backgrounds, to come to our university, and this should be protected. It's a disgrace that Glasgow University has more six-figure salaried employees than any other Scottish university, yet at the same time our vital student services go underfunded. This is not a case of not having the money, it's a question of priorities. If the university really didn't have the money, why would they be paying the Vice-Chancellor, Anton Muscatelli, over £300,000 every year? If elected, I'll demand the university readdress its priorities and fight to make sure our university provides money for our services and not for their own pockets. As well as being treasurer for the Marxist Society here at Glasgow, I would fight to make sure, I have the skills, and I would fight to make sure we have a more accountable, more democratic SRC. Thank you.
Hi, as a member of the Let's Talk campaign for the prevention of sexual violence, I'd like to know what you do to minimise the bureaucracy that stands between the campaign and its goals, and what measures you do implement to help survivors right now.
So I think we'll start with Marie and then go back.
Hello, thank you for your question actually. I had more to say about that in my manifesto, but just to sped up. One of the things that I'm doing right now is that the website, the university's website, currently has no information. If you try and search for something, it brings you up with scholarly articles, which is not what students need when they're looking for support. But there's a draft web page that I have ready to go for the website that I've been working with student services on, and that I actually had a meeting with some of the Let's Talk people, and I let them have a look at it and get their input. One of the other things that I've done is that I'm currently co-leading a work stream on preventing sexual violence, and that work stream is focused on reporting mechanisms. And I now have 2 spaces for campaigners from the Let's Talk campaign to get involved in that, to make sure that the student voice is being heard more effectively and that we've got more students so that we can have a wider look at what we want to do next. Yeah?
Yes, obviously the Let's Talk campaign this year, has gained a lot of recognition, on campus. I think it's very, very important that as a student body, we continue to promote support and awareness around sexual violence. I think that one measure to do this would be introducing compulsory training sessions for freshers helpers and volunteers starting over the next year. I think also hosting information sessions within each student body throughout the year that do outline, obviously, bystander intervention training and also further information about support that can be accessed, whether within the university or externally. We'll do a lot to support this. Obviously ensuring that the support is not coming at some form of power distance between the university and students. It's very important, and ensuring that the student bodies actively engage and address these issues will lead to constructive change.
I believe that the SRC should come out with vocal opposition to sexual violence and to the culture of sexual violence on campus. I think it's really important that the SRC links up with the student movement and what the student movement's doing on this, and grassroots campaigns all across the uni to reduce sexual violence and provides them with all the support that they need. Thanks.
Any more questions? So we'll go for Kate and then Thais.
Should Glasgow Uni be part of NUS, and why?
We'll start with Amir and then Ellen.
This is obviously a contentious issue, one that's been addressed in the past. Again, I think always representing what the views and consensus is of the wider student population is absolutely imperative. From the last referendum that took place, there was obviously a very, very small number of students that did support NUS affiliation. And I think obviously continuing to recognise what University of Glasgow students actually want, effectively is the way to address that issue. My own personal view on whether we should be affiliated. If it was my personal view, no. But again, I think that you always have to represent the views of students, and obviously we're an ancient university. Who knows what the future, long term down the line maybe.
I believe that there's pros and cons to being part of the NUS. I think it's not for the president to decide, it's for the students to decide. So whether that be through consultations, through a referendum, if the students want to, we'll do it. If the students don't, we won't. I think if we do or if we don't, it's still really important to link up with other universities in the fight for students' issues, especially against tuition fees in particular.
So is that yes or no?
It's not for the president to decide. It would be through democratic means that it would be what the students want.
Does that answer your question?
No, I'll be direct. We have the opportunity, because we're not affiliated with NUS, to run our own campaigns and to decide what we want to do as a university independently. And we'd rather have 4 bodies than just one, eh?
Hello. You've all talked about issues surrounding welfare and student activities, but I think there's been sort of maybe a lack of talk about education and what. So my question is, what issues do you think should be dealt with on an education point of view, and how would you go about dealing with those? If that makes sense.
And then we'll start with Ellen, and then we'll go.
So is your question what issues are there with education at the moment, and how should we deal with those? Okay. I think the main problem, one of the big issues, is that at the moment we still don't have free education, and the SRC should and could be a really vocal voice in opposition to tuition fees, but it's not being that, and I think that's something the SRC could really do. I think the SRC also needs to be more democratic and accountable. And if it had far more consultations with students, it would have a far better ability to find out what are students having problems with, what do students think, and how can we best represent them.
Thanks. I think a lot of the things I would have mentioned have already been brought up by the previous VP Education debate. But in my manifesto, I've highlighted that I'll work with said Vice President to push for better assessment and feedback, because there is a lot of good practice happening. There's just no communication on where that is, which is one of the reasons why the new restructuring of council is going to be great, because the academic forum means that our reps have more chance to interact with each other, to find out what's happening in all their schools, and to pass good practice back. So that's incredibly important. Yeah, short and sweet.
Don't get an answer. Yeah, I think, a kind of recurring theme that seems to be a stretch, many schools and colleges, is that many students do not have, I suppose, regular engagement or relationship with their advisor of studies. I think this is something that's very important, that students, do know who their advisor of studies are and do understand what their role is in relation to support. Again, assessment and feedback is a recurring theme, that has existed for a very long time. Ensuring that students, are prepared for examinations, and that effectively lecturers do outline what course requirements are and what, what level of curriculum is hoped to be achieved. I think pre-entry course requirements can also be an issue for many students. I know that within economics, for instance, many students are not aware that there is, a certain level of mathematical ability that is required. This is something that should, obviously be updated within campus prospectuses to obviously outline if courses, do have, a certain heavy weighing, whether it be mathematics, whether it be science, or some other form of, prerequisite knowledge, to ensure that students are prepared for whatever course of study they may venture upon.
Right, so questions. So we'll go Kathy, Oscar, Rowan, and then we'll kind of try and move back.
Hi. So I was just wondering, according to the strategic plan, of the 3 strategic aims that are outlined in the strategic plan, how would your presidency achieve these aims? What would you do to achieve these aims?
Yes, and if we start with Amir and then
Again, I think looking at obviously 3 strategic aims, whether it be welfare and support or enhancement of the student experience and representation, I think this broadly relates to council, largely in relation to how council do engage with the wider student population and how issues are addressed. In relation to welfare, I think, again, this relates to my previous point about the block grant allocation. Effectively, if services are being stretched across the board, there obviously the correlation between what is being demanded by the students and supply that the university is offering is not being met. the university does have to reassess how it supports the student bodies and ensuring that the service delivery that they offer is being utilised to the full. When it comes to the student experience, I think ensuring that the SRC continues to promote extracurricular events throughout the year and having a closer working relationship with clubs and societies and other groups on campus will, largely enhance this.
I think that, so in terms of welfare and support, it's an absolute disgrace that our student services, especially the counselling services, are being stretched when there's huge amounts of money in the university. So I would definitely fight for the university's money to be spent on our services and not into people's salaries. Also, I think for the student experience, the SRC needs to be and could be a really active voice on campus, campaigning and getting involved in student politics. And I think this would be a really good way for the SRC to engage with the majority of students, to engage with issues that affect their lives, and to become far more democratic and far more representative of the students' views themselves.
Thanks. Just thought I'd highlight first that the 3 strategic aims are representation, welfare, and volunteering and graduate attributes. In terms of representation, President needs to be a very loud voice in some of these committees. It's our job as a council, not just the President, to make sure that views are represented at every level within the university. In terms of welfare, I think I've done a lot of things this year to look after the welfare of current students, and I know that the next Vice President Student Support will do the exact same. And in terms of volunteering and graduate attributes as well, Vice President Activities is going to have to do a lot of work to make sure that everyone knows this. So I think that although we should be all focused on all of them, that Vice Presidents should be doing a lot of work as well. Yeah.
Thank you. Oscar.
My question is for Ellen. You've mentioned a few times free education and the abolition of tuition fees, which seems like a really nice idea. My question is, however, where would the funding for international students come from, especially if we want to have all staff members of the university paid a living wage? The funding for these students must come from somewhere. Is this going to be from the Scottish Government? Is this going to be from foreign governments? If you could just expound on that, please. Thank you.
I believe in free education. I think the vast majority of students believe in free education. I think it's a disgrace that people are being asked to pay money and just because of where they come from, and for their education, which should be something free and available to every single person, regardless of their background or the country they come from. I think there's been various other options that have been advocated for funding, different taxes, different government things, but I don't think as SRC President it's my role to come up with alternatives for government plans. I think it's the role of the SRC President to be active and to be saying, we believe in free education and we will fight for free education for every single one of our students, and we won't be happy if while people are paying extortionate amounts of money merely to get an education which should be a right.
Okay, so I'm aware that the vets will now have no school or college rep, so I was wondering how you're going to involve unrepresented students when you're making these big decisions and contact them about them.
Start with Ellen and then go Amir.
I think it's really important that not just the students who are reps and the students who have reps are represented on campus. I think it's really important that the SRC gets involved in grassroots campaigns across campus, has far more consultations, and really makes the effort to ensure that every single student is represented, every single student has their views heard, and that this council can really be a place for those views to be aired. So for me, for example, I know the campus redevelopment There was various consultations. I'd not heard of them. None of my friends had heard of them. So I think it's important, more consultations and far more publicity of these consultations, and have the SRC be a far more vocal and active presence on campus. So I think the SRC could do various things to publicise its work, through posters, through being out on this, around campus, speaking to people, more consultations, things like that. There's a wide range of ways, and also being really involved with student activism and speaking to people who are active in student politics and linking up with the wider movement.
Sorry. I'm trying to write down this, just got letters all over the place.
I think first and foremost, we need to have a massive, massive push for the October elections to make sure we do get a vet rep and to make sure all of the other positions are filled. But apart from that, I had some Welfare Week events at GUSRC, and now Government this week are having their own vet welfare week up there. So I've been in touch with some of the reps there, telling them about what I did here and passing on some information and contacts so that they could do it at GUSRC. But I think we need to go up there. We need to go up and chat to the vets, because it can be quite an isolating campus, and they need to know that we're here for them on Gilmore Hill as well. I know there are some great initiatives, like the peer support has actually been rolled out in the vet school, so maybe I think we need to be talking more to those peer supporters and finding out what issues are coming to them most often so that we can try and do something as the SRC.
Again, I think the SRC, obviously every student is automatically a member of the SRC. We have an obligation to ensure that we represent all students as broadly as possible. I largely think, a way to obviously deal with this would be further engagement, with vets out at GUSRC, ensuring that obviously vets, their voices are being heard, and identifying academic issues via class reps as well would do a lot, in relation to how we can, go to support vet students as well. Ensuring, as again, echoing what Una said around the October elections, ensuring that election periods, they are widely promoted across campus. The students actually have an active interest in running for positions so that they can represent, their various school, college or remit. We'll do a lot to support this.
Okay, right. Questions? So we'll go Kate, Mark, Paul.
Hello. Okay, so Amir, you mentioned in your manifesto that you want to create a student campus development committee. As you should probably know, staff consult with students often on their terms when the plans are in place. Surely a committee like this would only continue this problem, and why are you not pushing for student representation on project development boards where staff and students are on an equal level?
Again, I think there have been, over the last couple of years, futile attempts to consult with students via consultations and open presentation sessions that the universities run. I think there has to be broader representation, on these development boards, but effectively creating a campus development committee whereby these students, are concerned with, what the wider student population wants to see within the new campus as a sustainable way over the next decade to actually ensure student voices and needs are being heard. Effectively, they're obviously architects and statesmen buildings are outlining what their plans for the campus development are. But one of the issues, an issue that I can flag up from my experience this year relates to room bookings. There's a huge shortage of room bookings for rooms available for societies on campus to host extracurricular events and meetings. When the Learning and Teaching Hub presentation was outlined, there was no specific consideration for room space being available for societies, but rather open spaces being available for all students to use. Again, that is, fantastic. It's very good that there will be open spaces in the new Learning and Teaching Hub, but ensuring that there are rooms that societies can use to host their events, I think will go a long way to actually enhance the student experience. These are issues that perhaps staff are disengaged with, and that's why having this campus development committee that can, provide consistent feedback and be an intermediary link to the wider student population will go to, effectively, what's the word I'm looking for? Account for this issue. Yeah.
This question is mainly for Amir, and it was just from like reviewing your manifesto. You mentioned that you promoted the Movember campaign, and I was just wondering, like, what did you raise from that? Because I'm mainly asking just because it's obviously significant in showing that you have the skills qualified to be a president. So I was just curious about any details about that, because it's a main point on it.
The final Movember fundraising figure is actually still to be confirmed. We do still have a couple of fundraising boxes, and Movember, you know, are a charity that collects throughout the year. Movember, as an organisation, promote raising awareness for men's health as much as they do, you know, for fundraising efforts. This year, there were costs incurred for fundraising efforts, but there were also costs incurred for campaigning efforts. As I say, though, the final figure is still to be identified.
So aside from the sort of restructuring the council, how are the SRC going to effectively engage with postgraduate community? Because it is a big problem within, you know, sort of the SRC, and it's been highlighted by all the candidates near enough. So I'm just curious.
We start with Amir.
So again, postgraduate engagement, again, is a recurring theme. You know, it's been identified as an issue for a long time. I think something that came out of a postgraduate event that was held during refreshers this year was that postgraduates would like to see more consistent events throughout the year. Also ensuring that more events are held on campus over the summer period, I think will, you know, go a long way to tackle this problem. Many postgraduate students are here over the summer period, and there's a lack of activity on campus. So ensuring that we liaise with clubs and societies to see what societies are remaining active over the summer period, and also speak to the other student bodies to see what they may be hosting over the summer will go a long way to support this. Again, this has to, you know, be stretched out across the year to ensure that postgraduate needs and views are being heard, and again, more consultation via events to gain feedback from postgraduates throughout the year will go a long way to solve this issue.
I agree. I think the SRC really needs to make a better effort engaging with postgrad students and also disabled students and home students and other non-traditional students. I think the SRC could do a lot more in making sure that these groups are reached and really putting in the effort to get in touch with these groups, to get in touch with these students, to make sure that their voices are heard and their voices are represented.
I think one of the things would be to move PG fortnight for when the PGs can actually attend. This year we tried to do some work with the PGR buddy scheme, but it didn't really take off, so we need to come back to the table, see where we went wrong, and see how we can engage more postgrads that way. I don't think it's worth just trying to get rid of it. I think we just need to work and improve on how it can be better. I think we need more council training throughout the year so that we can empower our school reps to engage with their postgrad constituencies and to make sure they consult with them as well.
We had some questions, three questions on Twitter, so I think we'll do those now and then we'll go to take more from the floor. We had another one in November, but it was slightly different in that it was asking, do you consider the November campaign to be a success and why? The second question was for Amir, and it was a serious question, or at least bracketed as such. How many friends do you have on Facebook? And the third question was, which SRC service would you cut? So if we start with Ellen and then Amir. Yeah, so it was November a success? If it was, why? And then the second obviously is for Amir. Yeah. And then the third was, which service would you cut for the SRC to balance budgets?
So for the Movember campaign, I wouldn't say it was a particular success. I think there were certainly problems there. With which SRC service would I cut? I don't believe there's a need to cut any service with the SRC. As I've said before, the university does have the money and it's a question of priorities. And I think the SRC should and could really campaign to increase the funding for the SRC and for all the student services. I think it does have the power to do this, and I think we as students can fight to make sure that our services are properly funded and the money isn't being diverted elsewhere. This is our university, and really our students and our services should be the priority.
In reference to the first question, I do think this year, the aim of November, is to obviously raise awareness for men's health, and obviously fundraising as well was a part of that. I do think it was successful in that word got out around campus about the November campaign. I saw too that there were posters put up around campus and also in the other student bodies to promote the November campaign, with information being available about raising awareness for men's health. As regards how many friends I have on Facebook, I think that's, it's my own private Facebook account. I don't think it's too relevant. And again, regarding what SRC services should be cut, I personally don't currently identify any services that should directly be cut. I think that services are very, very stretched, and that, in many cases, supply is not able to correlate with demand, and that looking at how the block grant allocation from the university accommodates this will go a long way to solve these issues.
It's now March and we don't have the final figures from November, so I'm not sure if I'd question its success. As an SRC, we need to be better at what we're doing in terms of campaigning. We need more spread, and we need more people to actually know what we're doing. So I'm not sure about that first one. I don't think it was, to be honest. Second question, cutting a service. When I was a first year rep and had been at the university for a week, they asked me this question. And I'm not going to fall into that trap again. I don't think I want to also start off the year by cutting something. What a terrible way to start a potential presidency, by getting rid of things. That's not what we need. We need to improve the services we've got. The SRC block grant is about 585,000. The university makes a surplus of about, last year, of about 55 million. That is meaning we, for our block grant, get about 0.1% of that turnover, which is pretty shocking. So I think what we need is to, cross-campus, push for an increase to the funding that we all get across the board, as opposed to try and give up and cut something. No, we need to hold the university accountable and try and get them to raise it, as opposed to just giving in and cutting something.
Right, yes, so if we go, I'll get to the back of the room at some point, right. If we go Farhan, Jenny, and then Galina.
How do you feel the current president performed, and what would you do differently?
Just after work in an office together for 4 more months. It's fine. You know what? I think when you go into a role, you have loads of high hopes and achievements for it, and I think that Liam's been at least a half-decent president. How much of that beige has been burnt? Still, we've got 4 months left. There's 4 months left. Definitely been saged, maybe. Singed? Singed, not saged. I think what I'll do differently is that the SRC are currently, we're very good at engaging with the university, but what we're not very good at is engaging with students. And I think there's something wrong there. I think we need to be more focused on the students and what we're doing. Sorry, everyone got distracted by the tweet wall. So I think in terms of what I'll do differently, I think it'll be to be maybe a more visible president, and to engage with students just as much, if not more so, than we currently engage with the university.
In referring to obviously current President Liam, I think that he has made very constructive efforts to obviously challenge the university and address issues that obviously he sees as important. I think that current President probably could have gone further to challenge the university more, But again, you know, as was been highlighted, obviously within one's term, you know, it is difficult to obviously maintain the requirements of a day-to-day job and actually try to achieve all of your manifesto points. I think, again, what I would do differently is, you know, provide a very, very visible, engaging president on campus, be a very, very visible, engaging president on campus who actively tries to identify what student needs and issues are and actually take constructive action to address these to the university.
Yeah, I think Liam's done a really good job as president this year. I think the things the SRC still needs to work on is that it still fails to engage the vast majority of students. Most students still don't vote. Most students still aren't engaged with the work of the SRC. And so I think the way I would be a different SRC president is I've not been vice president last year. I've not sat on the SRC before. I can bring fresh ideas and really bring in the SRC to student politics and fight for things like housing, which the SRC has made gains on this past year, but really needs to stand in staunch opposition to exploitative rents, to the conditions in halls, and obviously for free education as well.
Jamie.
So my question's for Ellen specifically. I do agree that the SRC should be more political, and I agree with free education as well for all. However, I'm a little worried that your political views will take precedence over current students' needs. Like you're going to need to be working with conveners and school reps and everything. So how are you going to avoid prioritizing your political views? And yeah.
I'm a socialist. I've never tried to hide that. What that means for me is I really believe in fighting for students' rights, and that's what I'll do as president. I don't think it'll get in the way, because the way I would run the SRC and I would be president would be to really involve more students and have more grassroots campaigns, broad campaigns that draw in loads of students. So I wouldn't need to be the one, you know, sitting doing all this campaign work by myself. I would really be wanting to engage students and have them lead the SRC and have their views really represented, and them, you know, campaigning and fighting for their views. So I think that way I'd manage the work of the SRC president and also all these things that I think we really can achieve.
Okay. I had one question and now I kind of have two. Is that okay? Yeah. So first of all, to Ellen, you say that you're going to improve the quality of student halls and reduce rents to cover maintenance cost. How would you get the university to agree to this?
Well, I think at the moment, a lot of university money goes on high salaries of specific employees. There's over 80 employees at the university who earn a six-figure salary. I think if students knew about this, and then they knew that they were having to live in really poor conditions in halls, which were really expensive, and it wasn't because there was a necessity of the university, it was a choice, and they knew actually where a lot of university money is going, I think you could really generate support and really put pressure on the university to rethink their priorities.
And then did you have a second one?
So I'm doing a master's now, and you all talked about postgraduate representation, which is great. Postgraduate students should be represented. How can you explain, correct me if I'm wrong, but how can you explain the fact that there's not a single postgraduate convener candidate for this term? And if you think this is an issue, then how will you address it? And how can you make people that are here for 1 year care about what you're doing?
Yeah, if we start with Ellen and then go Amir.
I do think there is one postgrad convener, yeah, over there. But yeah, I do agree that it's definitely a problem that there's not more. I think the SRC in general, if it was more active, if it was involved in far more campaigns, if it was far bigger presence on campus, It would really help in engaging all students, and I also think specifically dedicating some work to making sure postgrad students are involved, are engaged, and do care about the university even though they're a year, and do feel they're able to stand for positions and feel like it's worth it.
Again, I think that question, if you look at the issues attached to that, it relates to engagement. I think ensuring that the SRC does consistently make efforts to engage with postgraduates throughout the year. This can be, from an extracurricular perspective by utilising GUSRC space and also working with other student bodies throughout the year to actually host events that are postgraduate focused, to obviously engage with the postgraduate community. I think also ensuring that postgraduates have a greater interaction with the SRC from the start of their academic terms. So whether that's by more lecture call-outs or, as I say, hosting a cohort of events at the start of the year, this will effectively go a long way to address these issues.
I think one thing, because the postgrad, some of the courses, they start in October, yeah? So I think the fact that they're being elected in March, when a lot of people don't know if they're going to be here or they haven't just arrived, like when we had them in October, when we had the unfilled spaces, you see like an increase in the people that want to run. So I think we elect the first year reps and the general reps for the first time in the October elections, and it might be questioning whether we think about electing them for the first time there. But in terms of the year, yeah, it is hard to get people to want to care about the place where they might only be for a short space of time. And I think everyone sort of mentioned it again and again, it's like engagement with postgrads, but we need to seriously improve because we're not good enough at the minute. And I think that hopefully we can engage with Bob, our one postgrad rep, and hopefully we have current postgrad reps as well, actually, that we can engage with more now before they leave in their term at the end of June to find out what we could do better before they go.
Right, we'll take Fraser and then we'll go to Elliot and Sarah.
Amir, there are some concerns that the charitable campaigns that the SRC has been running this year have not been a big success. Some people in this building maybe hold you responsible for that because you've been the VP activities for the last year. What can you say to reassure people who maybe don't think that you're competent enough to be president? How can you reassure them that you are?
Again, looking at fundraising efforts from the last year, I have fundraised for a variety of different charities, including obviously Children in Need, Movember, Worldwide Cancer Research, Poppy Scotland, and Macmillan. I think that there does have to be identification between what is a campaigning effort and what is a fundraising effort. I'm not going to obviously deviate away. The Movember campaign this year did not raise, costed against overheads, did not raise a huge amount of money. However, promoting the Movember campaign on campus was also in an effort to raise awareness for men's health. And I think identifying what is a campaign and what is exclusively a fundraising effort are two different things. I think also identification of the fact that charitable initiatives, do largely require overhead costs, for materials or promotion, for whatever that may be. I do believe, there have been some fundraising efforts that have been more successful than ours. We raised for Poppy Scotland last October, and we raised over £700 with effectively no overhead costs from part of the SRC. I think that ensuring we continue to support charities, it's an important part of the student experience. I think it's something that a lot of students actively have an interest in, to fundraise for charity. In relation to competency as a president, the vast majority of fundraising efforts have generated surplus. I think looking at other achievements throughout the year, such as consistent support to clubs and societies, and also being a consistently visible and accessible member to the wider student population, not just on issues concerned with my remit, but also on a number of other issues that students from different student bodies and areas of the university have come to me about, and I've managed to signpost them or find effective solutions to what they've inquired about, makes me a very strong candidate for president. I believe, strongly that I have been the most visible member of the executive this year, and I think that's something within the role of president that's very, very important, to be actively engaged with the wider student population, so that issues that there is a strong student voice on campus for any issues that may arise.
I don't particularly want to sound like a broken record, and I'm aware that some of this has just been covered, but Amir, this is kind of turning into the elephant in the room, Movember, and as is Children in Need. Are you willing to put a number on it? Are you willing to tell us what it is? Because some of us in the room know the ballpark figure, and it's pretty embarrassing.
Are you speaking about the total fundraise for Movember via overhead costs? Okay, the total Movember fundraising, as I say, there are still a couple of boxes available with some that have still to be updated. I believe at last count it was £260 against overhead costs, which were I think £264. Now, I would like to address that overhead costs were not all in an effort for fundraising efforts. If you actually look at the overhead costs that were inclusive within that, you're looking at campaigning costs to promote the Movember campaign on campus. The reason that we had high overhead costs this year actually related to an administrative error that was not on my part, but effectively related to an excess order of moustaches. I know that sounds funny. A decision was taken, obviously. We were not going to receive the materials in time, and the SRC ordered more. However, we do still have a supply of moustaches that can be used for future campaigns. This is not a sunk cost. It's something that can be used in the future. And again, if we had sent the original order back and received a refund, overhead costs would have been below what the total fundraising costs were. As regards Children in Need, overhead costs, I believe, were £113, and our final donation was £315. Again, we do still have materials from this, such as onesies, that can be used for future campaigns in future years.
Hello, I'm Amir. I'm rather involved in the charities and fundraising aspects of society life on campus. I do find your manifesto quite dishonest in its treatment of your support for societies like that. I've not seen any support coming from you whatsoever, I'm afraid, for us, where does it say it here, to host events or to change room bookings or anything like that. I've not seen your visibility, I'm afraid. But more importantly, there's a question about your role as VP Student Activities. It's recently emerged that the SRC grants to societies to cover costs for fundraising events have been cut, replaced by the option of taking out a loan. This is, of course, rather counterintuitive and was implemented without any warning or precedent. Your manifesto details that you have seen through the allocation of over £6,000 to societies, to the university's vast array of clubs and societies this year. But first of all, I'd like to know, what was your role in the scrapping of fundraising grants? Secondly, did you attempt to block it? And thirdly, where does your figure of £6,000 stand relative to previous years?
Looking at the amendment to criteria for societies to apply for grants on a fundraising basis was not a decision made on my behalf. It is something that is ongoing and something that I personally do not support. However, it is under review and will continue to be reviewed. Regarding allocation of over £6,000 to clubs and societies, there is an annual budget for clubs and societies which the Clubs and Societies Committee is allocated each year. I believe that we are on a relatively similar level to the previous years, and this correlates again with the fact that the Clubs and Societies budget has not increased. You stated, what society was it that you came from? Sorry.
I'm with Amnesty International mostly.
Okay. Amnesty International, again, in relation to the support I've given to clubs and societies, when clubs and societies have contacted me over the course of the year, when they've wanted to host events, I do believe I have been actively supportive to different groups on campus. This relates to societies that have looked for a venue space when they have not been able to find it at the university, or they have incurred substantial charges. I have made efforts to find alternative space available to them. Also, as regards funding, clubs and societies obviously come to the SRC directly for grant applications, but I also, have supported societies in trying to find alternative fundraising efforts, such as fundraising via bake sales and other events on campus, such as Kaylee's, by pushing them in contact with different groups to obviously meet their financial obligations. Again, there are over 250 societies. I do believe I have been supportive of clubs and societies and addressed issues when they have come to me. I don't know if you've got a specific example of when I've not been supported to Amnesty, but I do believe I have been very supportive.
Questions, right. I've gone to the back of the room. Right, we'll go Laurie and then Roy and then the lovely sort of the mauve jumper.
Hello. Two questions. First of all, you've all talked about services being stretched due to funding. Given that the SRC, as with all 4 student bodies, is facing more and more severe budgetary pressures, do you believe that funding for sabbatical positions is the best way of spending 11% of your annual budget?
I think we will start with, we'll go Una, Amir,
Hello. Good question. Which is quite a tricky one to answer, to be honest. I know. I think if I was to, I know the GE don't have currently any sabbatical positions, but that the QM and GUSRC and the SRC do. I guess if I was to find a way around this. Oh, I'm faltering on this one, aren't I? I think it's a reasonable way to spend some of the money. Maybe we could get rid of one, and keep, I don't know. But I think that there's a lot of work to be done. In terms of meetings, like I know if I was doing my sabbatical role but was also studying, I wouldn't be able to attend any of the meetings that I do currently go to. I sit in all of the inequality and diversity groups and a couple of strategy things. The work that I've been doing with preventing sexual violence has also taken up time in terms of like committees, and that they fill up, so you've got meetings almost like at least a couple every day, and then you have to like do the reading for those meetings, and then you have to like actually follow through in your actions. So I think that, yeah, some of the sabbatical positions that we have are necessary just because of the amount of time that you have to give to it and the amount of meetings you have to go to and this work you have to do for it. And if I think of things that I've achieved this year that I know are going to stay after my time, then I think that's worth the money. Like things like, once we've done a lot more work with the preventing sexual violence, that will be framework that is sustainable and long-lasting. The Safe Taxi Scheme, some of the other sort of things I do as well. So I think that, yeah, in terms of being worth value for money, I think I have.
Again, obviously, the role of sabbatical is currently, our full-time jobs. I know that, from the 4 of us, from our perspective this year, we do work out with, office hours and so forth as well. I do think that sabbatical officers do provide a very, very vital role within the SRC. They obviously, are a main point of contact, not just for council, but for the wider student community, who are there on a full-time basis to address issues within their various remits. I think the SRC also has to look at, obviously block funding is an issue, and again, I think this is something the university has to identify. But the SRC, perhaps could look at alternative measures as to how we can generate income as an organisation to continue to support services that we do deliver on an annual basis. I think also identifying the remit of various sabbatical positions. I know my own position, Vice President of Student Activities, the remit is still evolving, and I think that's something that has to perhaps be clearly outlined to actually identify what can be achieved and what value these positions do offer to the organisation and the student population as a whole.
I think the sabbatical positions, especially the president, it is a full-time job, and it's important that we have a president, a full-time president, who can be strong and effective force on campus to answer students' questions, to hear students' views, and to represent those views. I think compared to some of the high salaries that university staff get paid, which I've talked about previously, these roles are really a drop in the water in comparison, and I think if the SRC was really vocal, active and successful in engaging students, it would definitely be worth the money.
How do you feel the relationships between the 4 student bodies have been over the past year, and what would you do to improve these relationships?
Start with Amir and Ellen in a room.
I think there has been obviously communication, on a wide range of things such as campaigns and obviously events that are hosted across campus. However, I think this is something that largely has to improve. I know from sitting across campus this year that actually achieving goals, that we all want to achieve is something that must continue to be developed. I think that having a clearer cross-campus structure by having scheduled meetings at the start of the year would go a long way to actually improve this, to ensure that whether we are whether it's not just within Freshers Week and hosting this campus-wide event, but over the course of the year actually ensuring that we can work together to promote central themes that we all are passionate about in relation to enhancing the student experience. I think also having more interaction between council and the boards of the other student bodies will go a long way to actually increase communication. So having perhaps meet and greet sessions intermittently throughout the year for all elected individuals to actually meet one another, hear different views and perspectives, and perhaps collaborate on various ventures and initiatives will be a very productive goal.
As I've said before, I was not sitting on the SRC Council next year. I'm a new candidate. I'm here to sort of provide fresh views and really make a change in the SRC. I think the SRC could definitely link the bodies all up and also link up with students in general, working together on campaigns, events and student services, things like the Starfish service and like the counselling service obviously is one example. So yeah.
I'd actually spoken to a couple of the current presidents. Sorry, I didn't quite get to you, Rory. And what I'd heard from previous cross-campus, which I don't sit on at the moment as an exec, it's just president and vice president student activities for the SRC, is that it was a bit of a waste of time apparently after Freshers Week. So I think that together, cross-campus, need to sit around the table after Freshers Week, after that's done, and to establish aims for the year, to have agendas for their meeting, and to, even if it's a small calendar of events, to be like, well, in January, we're all going to do this together, in March, we're all going to do this together, and to decide on what they want the aims for the year to be. And I think with sort of more coherent structure, I think cross-campus could be improved from what I know of it currently.
I just wanted to ask a question, because obviously it's been previously spoken about that there are 25,000 students at Glasgow University. It's obviously quite a small portion of them in this room, and it does seem like a lot of the people that are here, this isn't a criticism, but it just seems the fact that a lot of people that are here kind of already know each other, are on a first name basis. Now, like I say, it's not a criticism. Obviously it's good that the people here are engaged with the SRC, but do you think it's important to kind of widen widen the pool beyond the kind of relatively small portion that are engaged, and kind of how would you propose doing that?
I think that's a really important point. It's really, really small, the number of students who are engaged with the SRC, and this is a massive problem. The SRC really needs to work on making sure it represents the views of all students and not just the students who are involved in the SRC at the moment. As president, I think it's really important to become involved in student politics on campus. There's a lot that's going on with student politics on campus, and the SRC just isn't linking up with it and is shutting itself off to all those students. So if I was president, I will link up with all of those student movements on campus, things that are going on in student politics, and make the SRC far more relevant and far more accessible for people. I also think it's more important to have far more consultations, to be out there and to really be listening to students' views and then representing their views and really being a council that is for the students.
Yeah, I think it's incredibly important that we try and widen the pool of students. If you look at voting turnout as well, and the number of candidates that run in elections, it isn't good enough. And I think we need to think of new ways to try and involve people more. And I think that what the campaigns committee that I referred to earlier, I think that's one of the ways that we can do this, because when you invite students and you invite clubs and societies to come along and sit around the table with exec and council members and to decide what events they want to focus on, what campaigns they want to see from the SRC throughout the year. That way you're going to have people that are engaged and care about what we're doing because they're involved, and we're doing something that the students want to see happen. So I think that's incredibly important. I think that's one way we could do it. I'm sure there are others, even just awareness, like things as simple as maybe lecture shout-outs. There's the problem at the minute, if you send an email, it sort of gets lost amongst all of the spam. So I think we need to have a look at that as well. And I think like a monthly sort of newsletter is the way to do that. It's not too many emails, it's maybe just right, we'd have to see. But with all the relevant information, so it means that if they want to, that they've got it right there. But yeah, we need to be more interactive, and I think that we need to have a good think about how we take that forward.
This is obviously definitely an issue. Students, who are engaged with the SRC across campus, is obviously something that, largely, from, you look at different aspects, from voting turnout, to largely, drop-in services, drop-in sessions that we hold here at the SRC. It's a figure that's subsiding over time. Council and the exec, effectively, I suppose you could argue, are the face of the organisation, and ensuring that council members' profiles, are raised throughout the year to ensure that engagement is maintained will go a long way to obviously increase engagement. I think broadening how we currently communicate with students, is something that also has to be re-evaluated. Again, if you look at, online communication, social media is something that, could largely be utilised a lot more to ensure that, we do interact with the wider student population. I think ensuring as well that post-Freshers Week we do supply a number of events throughout the year. There's obviously this huge cohort of events that do take place at the start of the year, but ensuring that students in other year groups, can also access events will go a long way to actually increase the profile and engagement with the SRC.
Hi, so a lot of students also work from the university, whether that's in cafes and like the QMU and the GU, or whether that's as postgraduate students doing tutoring or minibus drivers, etc., etc. And how would you help engage those students and help improve their working conditions, considering that they are working for this university, often on really bad contracts and not getting paid very much?
Again, I think continue to promote the services that the Advice Centre offers, and offering free and impartial, employment advice will go a long way to actually support students, who do face any issues under employment conditions within the university. As I say, this is obviously a service that's open to all students at the University of Glasgow, but ensuring students actually do know where to locate services or any support that they do require, you know, is very, very important. So I would continue to work with the Advice Centre to actually identify what measures they take to address employment issues and how we can continue to promote the services we do provide.
I think this is a really important issue. I think as the SRC it's our duty to stand up for the rights of students when they're working, guaranteeing that they can have a living wage and a fair contract. In particular, you spoke about the SRC bus drivers, and this is quite a disgrace that at the very heart of the SRC, we're employing people on exploitative contracts which have no guarantee of regular work, no pension plan, no sick pay, no maternity leave, and very little job security. And it's a complete hypocrisy that the SRC a few years ago campaigned against 0 hours and exploitative contracts, and is yet employing their bus drivers on extremely exploitative contracts which are akin to 0 hour contracts. So if I was president, I would seriously look at this and make sure that those contracts are not kept in place.
So the first part of the question was how to engage with the students at work. I think that's a tricky one, depending on if it's a student that works during the day, if it's a student that works when all the evening times events are on. You need to try and find that balance between events that people want to go to during the day and events that people want to go to at night, just so that you're covering that spread of people that work different hours. But yeah, in terms of contracts, yeah, I think working with the Advice Centre, obviously they're all very trained and know exactly what they're doing. But yeah, to review contracts and make sure that they're fair, and to find out the people on them, what they think of them, and if they work for them or if they don't, and then do something about it. But yeah, it's totally ridiculous that tutors spend so long marking and so long doing other things with their work and get paid poorly for it.
Hello again. My question is for Una. Sorry, I'm going to bring this up. In your manifesto, you talk about trying to work with students who are parents and trying to make their time at university better. And I was wondering if you could expand on that a little bit and talk about what you would want to continue doing as a president about this issue.
Thanks. The work that I'm doing is currently with our age equality officer. And we're looking into, because there's just a lack of support across the board for students and our parents. And what we've done is we've written up a survey that we're going to send out to all students to see just so that we can get we anecdotally know what we think the problems are, but we need to find out from the students what they actually are so that we can do something about it. For example, if you're unwell and you can't submit an essay, you speak to your lecturer, you submit good cause, and if you have a doctor's note, that's you know what I mean? You can't currently do that for your child. Some subjects do, but there's no sort of consistency across the board for support available. If you've got a kid, they can't get into the library because they don't have a student card, but I believe progress is being made on that one, Elliot. Got it, yeah. Kids in the library, see, that's the start. So no, as president, I would want to make sure we're consulting with student parents, because again, you need to find out what the issues actually are instead of just thinking that you understand them all. And I'd work with the proper officers to ensure that that was happening and that they were engaging with their constituencies to find out how we could improve as a university across the board.
Hi, so this is mainly for Una, but I want to open it up to everyone else. I saw the point you were trying to push for better assessment of feedback university-wide, and I think that's really interesting and worthwhile, because I can speak from an art student. It's pretty terrible sometimes, and you get single-line comments, etc. So I was just wondering, how are you actually planning to make that a tangible change that's going to sustain for some time? And then open it up to everyone else if they've thought about it more.
Again, this is sort of almost parroting what VP Education had said earlier, but some of the university, there's so much good practice going on, and we just don't know about it. So I think we need to touch in with all the appropriate school reps and find out what's going on in their school, because if someone's doing it much, much better, then there should be a more sort of collaborative approach to that. And again, the academic forum, which we had the first one of the pilot this year, was like hugely successful. All the feedback from that was great, and the university are actually very keen to come along to the academic forums and to find out what council are saying about assessment and feedback so they can improve it. It's actually in the university strategy, I want to say, that their aim for NSS results is to get the figure up to 75% satisfaction with assessment and feedback, because the university knows it's really bad at it and they're willing to listen to us and consult with us to make it better, which I think is important.
Again, obviously, different schools, colleges, and subject departments, do obviously have different criteria, regarding how they assess their students. Whether it's by a continuous assessment or an end-of-year assessment. I think it's very, very important to continue to ensure that class reps, are proactively actually addressing the issues that are brought to them from other members of their classes, to actually ensure that lecturers are identifying what the issues are and how these can be addressed. Feedback, again, is something that the university is very, very important to students' development, to actually identify what they are doing well, and particularly, if they are failing in certain areas, how they can improve. So I think it's very important that more extensive feedback, is circulated. There could be obviously efforts within this to obviously look at having minimum, feedback requirements in relation to how much feedback is given for a particular piece of work, and to feed that back to the wider student population.
I think this issue of feedback clearly affects students, and it's important to have dialogues with the whole student body, really finding out what students think of the current system, what the different systems are in different schools, feeding this back to the university, and trying to get the best way that works for students, really.
We had a question on Twitter, so we'll take that one very quickly, and then I'll gauge kind of how many questions are left in the room, and then we can go from there, if that's all right. So there was a question from Hannah Gower, and it was regarding something which virtually everyone's mentioned, but I think I'll amend it slightly to try and get you to sort of focus in a little bit. And that it's, what one thing would you implement that would make the SRC more accountable and transparent to the student body? And I think we'll start with Ellen, and then we'll go Amir.
The thing I would implement would be to make the SRC more political. If the SRC was a political force on campus, out involved in other student politics, engaging in the issues that really affect students, so housing, massive issue that affects students, really working hard for rent controls and, as I said previously, better conditions in halls, working to make sure that the SRC fights for free education, and fights for the FE colleges, being a political force that isn't afraid to be vocal in representing students' views and fighting for students and fighting for their rights.
Again, I think a huge issue that currently exists on the SRC Council relates to handover documents. I think that obviously many students run for different positions, but ensuring that there is knowledge and understanding of various roles, and also how efforts can be made to continue work that's been carried out in the previous year, will go a long way to ensure that actually students do achieve their manifesto objectives. I think Council has also been open to questions from the wider student population at council meetings. Could also be quite constructive. This could be via Twitter, such as obviously the forum that we've got, taking place at the moment, to obviously ensure there is interaction with the wider student population. I think also having, biannual updates from what council members and executive members have achieved at the start, at the end of each semester, will also go a long way to ensure that the student population actually identify what council and the exec are doing and whether or not they see that as productive.
One thing, apart from the fact we already have the minutes, we need to be publishing in a more accessible format what all of the reps are up to, school reps and welfare officers and conveners and exec. Everybody publish what we're doing more often than we currently do.
Also, right, just to get a gauge how many questions are left in the room, can you stick your hand up if you want to ask a question? Okay, we'll
What is your personal stance on the EU referendum, and would SRC Council, under your reign, consider taking a stance on it?
We'll start with Amir and go Ellen.
From a personal perspective, I am pro-EU. You know, I think it's very, very good. You know, both for the free movement of people, and also if you look from an economical perspective, you know, at ensuring, you know, trade, you know, is maintained with the rest of the continent. I think regarding the SRC taking a political stance on it, again, this is something the SRC as an organisation is here to represent students. I think there definitely could be more development made to actually engage with what the wider student population's views are on, you know, topical issues such as the EU, and actually try to represent that on a national platform.
For the EU personally, I believe that both under the current system we have in the EU, huge amounts of people are really badly exploited, and similarly, if we left the EU, we would still have hundreds of thousands of people in the world who are exploited by the system of capitalism, who have to live in poor housing, who get terrible wages, and who can't live in the countries that they want to. So that's my personal opinion. For what the SRC should say, I think it's really important that the SRC becomes more political and takes political stances on issues that really affect students, such as what I said, like the FE, the cuts to FE colleges and on free education. The EU referendum, I think there could definitely be a consultation with students, and if it was clear that student opinion was really one way or the other, the decision could be made by the students to come out, but I don't think that's for the President to say. I think it's for the President to facilitate the SRC becoming a place where students' views really get heard and listened to.
So Amir is saying, but you would have an equal voice with all the other students. So what would your voice be in Ireland? Yeah, Ellen.
I think the role of the SRC President isn't to have your view on the EU broadcast to the world. I think the role of the SRC President is to make sure the students' views on issues such as this are heard by the world, because that's your job. You're there to represent the students' views. You're not there to represent what you personally think about the EU. So I would have find out what students think. Do students want the SRC to take a stance on this? Do the students think that it would be beneficial for the SRC to say, oh, this is what we believe? So I think it's not for me to say, oh, what I think about the EU. I don't think the SRC should represent what I think about the EU. I think it should represent what students think about the EU and what they believe.
Yeah, I'd be pro-EU. I'd be staying. In terms of the President being able to sway Council, the President is one vote. The rest of Council all have one vote, and I think everyone in Council's voice is important, and that everyone should be heard speak. So no, I think it would be everyone's vote counts, democracy, and no, I don't think there would be much sway, because again, it shouldn't be swayed on anyone's personal views. We're here to represent.
I'd like to direct my question to Ellen, please. I have some concerns that the SRC becoming more political would isolate students and make them disengage with the SRC. Do you have anything to say about
that? No, I disagree on that. I don't think becoming more political would at all isolate students. If the SRC was clear that it was actually there fighting for issues that make really big, that really largely affect students' lives, I think that would be a really positive thing. And there's a lot of student politics going on campus, and none of that is being tapped into by the SRC, and all these people are being disenfranchised and disengaged with the SRC. So I think it's actually really important for the President of the SRC to be political. It's also a political role, and it should be a political role, because it should be about representing what students think and what they believe and their views and fighting for their views. So I think it's actually really important and is a great opportunity to engage more people with the SRC and really make it a council for the students.
Okay, so how would you empower the council to achieve the aims you want to achieve? Because in the past, the training seemed to be too little and too late.
Ellen, do you want to start and we'll just move this way again?
I think that it's really possible to achieve a lot with the SRC, and the SRC really should and could and should aim to achieve a lot. I think if the SRC had more support from the broad student base, had big campaigns to really fight for the important things in students' life, and got way more support from the majority of students, I think it has a lot of power, and it could use that power to be really vocal and really strong. And I think a lot is achievable if we really fight for it, and if we have students behind us to really fight for it.
There obviously is quite a substantial disparity between when individual members of council are elected in March and when effectively most council members actively carry out their role from the start of the academic year the following September. I think that ensuring there's a level of engagement between newly elected members and current members of council from the very start, from subsequently after when they're elected, will go a long way to actually enhance, and identify what council members hope to achieve, when newly elected council members hope to achieve when they do begin their terms. Ensuring also that handovers that outline, work that has been completed and ongoing work will go a long way to obviously support council members, and more frequent and scheduled meetings with effectively the 3 VPs who line manage council to ensure that support is consistently available throughout the year, so that council members can achieve whatever it is they want to achieve.
Thanks. The handover document is quite important, but that's already been mentioned, so I won't really talk about that. We need more training throughout the year. I think training needs to be earlier for the first lot of council members elected, and then again when the new lot of council members come in October, and then that sporadically throughout the year we have different training sessions on different things and different elements of stuff you might need to know as a representative. I think one of the ways to empower council members, again, it's going to go back to the restructuring. I think when you have these forums that gives all the reps the chance to come together and to discuss things that are happening and to feedback and represent students, I think that will empower our reps to do everything they want to.
So we've touched on it briefly. That's the exceptional surplus that the university posted in the last financial year, £55 million. To be fair, £26 million of those were a one-off tax credit from the government. So the actual, leaving that aside, around sort of £29 million in sort of cash surplus that the university made this year. The university has a new strategic plan. It's called Inspiring People, Changing the World. And one of the strategic aims in that is to achieve a certain level of cash generation, that's the surplus, by the year 2020, and to keep it there in order to fund the campus redevelopment. There are many questions as to whether that number is too high and is starving of current funding for students of today at the benefit of students of tomorrow. Or equally, you could say, well, we can pay a little bit more for a little bit better in the long run. But what is that actual number? What does the university aspire to generate in surplus each and every year until 2020 to fund the new campus?
Much like the other answers to Liam's questions, I know that they want the aim is to, although they'll go over as they do with everything else, but the aim is the 775 million for the new campus. So I'm probably wrong, but I want to say that if you divide that by the 5 years that the strategy takes, that's what they'll be wanting to make a year to get that much money. Maybe that logic was flawed.
Again, the university is obviously venturing out to subsidise this huge development. I know that the university also does, hold its reserves, which, I believe will be, allocated towards this development. But I would say an annual figure of 50 million.
I would say annual figure of perhaps 40 million. But to be honest, I don't really think it's a particularly relevant question, because as SRC president, when you're sitting on boards, when you're making decision, you'll have all the relevant facts and figures to look at. So I don't really think it's particularly relevant to see who is memorizing certain things. When you're making the decisions, you'll have the facts and figures to hand. So.
Well, for those who are interested, the figure is 24.5 million. But I suppose the sort of slightly esoteric point I've been trying to make over the last 2 days is that it is you guys, it is the people who are running in these positions whose job it is to know these details. Because 26,000 students aren't there, don't have the time or even the inclination to know these kind of details. But if there are no further questions, I think we'll wrap that up there. Just one sort of congratulations to all the candidates who are in the hustings tonight and last night. It is incredibly difficult. I've done this a number of times. It's something to be proud of. It was not an easy ride by any means. So best of luck to you three, best of luck to all the candidates that are standing tomorrow. Voting opens tomorrow at 9 AM and it closes on Thursday at 5 PM. Thank you very much to Glasgow and to The Guardian, who've been doing a lot of coverage this week, and we'll carry on doing that. Gemma for furiously typing away on the Twitter over there. And the candidates who are going through the hustings today, I'll buy your drinks in the Gilchrist if you would like to join me. But thank you all very much.